My husband wrote me out of his will, and I found out by accident. We were sitting in the leather chairs of Mitchell and Associates law firm, the mahogany-paneled office where respectable families handled respectable business. The Persian rug beneath our feet probably cost more than my first car. The oil paintings on the walls depicted hunting scenes, men on horseback, chasing foxes through manicured English countryside. Everything about that office screamed old money, tradition, legacy, and I was about to learn exactly where I stood in my husband's legacy. We had come to discuss estate planning, or so I thought. Robert had mentioned something about tidying up some paperwork and asked me to join him at the lawyer's office. I assumed it was routine. After 12 years of marriage, I assumed a lot of things. That was my first mistake. Robert's attorney, William Ashworth III, was a silver-haired man with the practiced charm of someone who had spent 40 years telling wealthy people exactly what they wanted to hear. He greeted Robert with a firm handshake and a knowing smile. He greeted me with a polite nod and a vague look of confusion, as if he wasn't quite sure why I was there. "Robert, good to see you. And this must be..." He glanced at his notes. "Your current wife?" Current wife, not your wife, not Vivian, not even Mrs. Harrison. Current wife, as if I were a temporary arrangement, a placeholder between the wife who came before and whoever might come after. "Vivian," Robert said, not noticing or not caring about the slight. "She wanted to come along today." Of course, of course." William shuffled some papers. "Well, as we discussed last month, everything is in order. The updated will reflects your wishes exactly. Everything goes to your children from your first marriage, with the trust distributions we outlined." The words hit me like ice water. Updated will. Everything goes to your children from your first marriage. I sat perfectly still, my face revealing nothing, while my entire understanding of my marriage crumbled around me. "The children will be well taken care of," William continued, oblivious to my shock. "The trust structure ensures they'll receive distributions at 25, 30, and 35, with the remainder." "William," Robert's voice was sharp, "perhaps we could discuss the details privately." The lawyer looked up, finally noticing that something was wrong. His eyes darted to me, then back to Robert, and realization dawned on his face. "Ah, I see. My apologies. I assumed..." He trailed off, suddenly very interested in reorganizing the papers on his desk. The silence that followed was deafening. I didn't ask questions, didn't demand explanations, didn't create the scene that both men were clearly bracing for. I simply stood up, smoothed my skirt, and said, "I'll wait in the car." And I walked out of that office with my dignity intact and my heart in pieces. My name is Vivian Okafor Harrison. I am 47 years old. I was born in Detroit, Michigan, the daughter of Nigerian immigrants who built a successful accounting practice from the ground up. My parents taught me many things about life, about money, about the difference between what people say and what they actually mean. "Watch what they do, not what they say," my mother used to tell me. "Words are free. Actions cost something. When someone shows you their true priorities through their actions, believe them." Robert Harrison had just shown me his true priorities, and I believed him completely. I need to tell you about the 12 years that came before that moment in the lawyer's office. I met Robert at a charity gala in 2011. He was 52 then, recently divorced, with 2 adult children from his first marriage. Stephanie, 25, and Marcus Jr., 22. They called themselves the real Harrisons when they thought I couldn't hear. Robert was handsome in that distinguished way that wealthy men in their 50s often are. Silver temples, tailored suits, the quiet confidence that comes from never having to worry about money. He was the CEO of Harrison Manufacturing, a company his grandfather had started in 1952, and his father had grown into a regional powerhouse. I was 35, an executive at a financial consulting firm, newly promoted and finally feeling like I had made something of myself. I wasn't looking for a husband. I wasn't looking for money. I was looking for a glass of champagne and an early exit from a networking event I hadn't wanted to attend. Robert found me hiding near the dessert table. "You look like you'd rather be anywhere else," he said, appearing beside me with 2 glasses of champagne. Is it that obvious? Only to someone who feels exactly the same way. He handed me a glass. I'm Robert. Vivian. Beautiful name. Nigerian? You know Nigerian names? I spent 3 years working with a manufacturing partner in Lagos. Learned a few things. He smiled, including how to spot someone who's been dragged to an event they didn't choose. I laughed despite myself. My firm is a sponsor. Attendance was strongly encouraged. Mine too. But I own the firm, so I have no one to blame but myself. We talked for 3 hours that night. He was charming, intelligent, self-deprecating in a way that felt genuine. He told me about his divorce. His ex-wife had left him for his former business partner, a betrayal that had wounded him deeply. He told me about his children, how the divorce had strained his relationship with them, how he hoped to rebuild what had been damaged. He told me he was looking for a fresh start. I believed him. We dated for 18 months before he proposed. I met his children during that time, Stephanie and Marcus Jr., both of whom regarded me with thinly veiled hostility. I was only 10 years older than Stephanie. They saw me as an interloper, a gold digger, a threat to their inheritance. They'll come around, Robert assured me. They're just protective of me after what their mother did. Once they see that you're not like her, everything will be fine. I believed him. We married in a small ceremony in the Hamptons. His children attended but didn't smile in any of the photographs. His ex-wife sent a card that said, "Congratulations. Hope this one works out better for you." I told myself it didn't matter. I had Robert. We had each other. The rest would sort itself out with time. I believed that too. The first 5 years of our marriage were genuinely happy. Robert was attentive, generous, loving in all the ways that mattered. We traveled together, Paris, Tokyo, Cape Town, places I had always dreamed of seeing. We built a life in his family estate, a sprawling colonial in Greenwich, Connecticut, that had been in the Harrison family for 3 generations. I continued my career, eventually becoming a partner at my firm. Robert was supportive, proud of my accomplishments in a way that felt authentic. He introduced me to his business associates as my brilliant wife and seemed to mean it. But there were cracks, even then. Small fissures I chose not to examine too closely. His children never warmed to me. Family holidays were exercises in endurance. Stephanie's pointed comments about how things used to be, Marcus Jr.'s deliberate exclusion of me from conversations about family history. Robert would occasionally intervene, but more often he would simply pretend not to notice. "They don't mean anything by it," he would say. "That's just how they are." Money was another sensitive subject. Robert was generous with household expenses, vacations, gifts, but he kept his finances largely separate from mine. "It's just simpler this way," he explained. "With the business, the trusts, the complications from the divorce, it's easier to keep things clean. I had my own money, my own career, my own financial independence. I didn't need his wealth, so I didn't push. Looking back, I realize I should have pushed. I should have asked questions. I should have demanded the transparency that a 12-year marriage entitled me to. But I trusted him. That was my second mistake. The middle years of our marriage were when the distance began. It happened gradually, the way erosion happens. So slowly you don't notice until the landscape has fundamentally changed. Robert became more involved with his children's lives as they grew older. Stephanie got married, had children of her own. Marcus Jr. joined the family business, working alongside his father every day. Suddenly, Robert had a whole life that I was adjacent to, but not really part of. Family dinners became Harrison family dinners, events where spouses were technically welcome but clearly secondary. Business discussions happened in rooms I wasn't invited into. Holiday traditions were established that centered on the way we've always done things, which meant the way things were done before I existed. I raised these concerns with Robert, gently at first, then more directly. "I feel like an outsider in my own family," I told him one night, after a particularly painful Thanksgiving where Stephanie had referred to her mother as the only real Mrs. Harrison within my hearing. "You're overreacting," Robert said. "Stephanie didn't mean anything by it." "She called your ex-wife the only real Mrs. Harrison, while I was standing right there. She's protective of her mother. It's been hard for her, seeing me move on." We've been married for 8 years, Robert. When does she get to move on? These things take time. Time. Always more time. More patience. More understanding from me, while his children offered none. I started to wonder if I was the problem. Maybe I wasn't trying hard enough. Maybe I was too sensitive. Maybe I expected too much from people who had experienced genuine trauma from their parents' divorce. I second-guessed myself constantly. That was my third mistake. The final years of our marriage, before that moment in the lawyer's office, were characterized by a quiet resignation. I stopped trying to win over Stephanie and Marcus Jr. I attended family events but stopped expecting to be included in meaningful ways. I focused on my career, my friendships, the parts of my life that were truly mine. Robert and I existed in a state of comfortable cohabitation. We shared a home, a bed, occasional meals together. We were cordial, even affectionate at times. But the deep intimacy of our early years had faded into something more like a business partnership. I told myself this was normal. All marriages evolved. The passion of the early years naturally transformed into something calmer, more sustainable. I told myself I was happy. I told myself a lot of things. And then I sat in that lawyer's office and learned that my husband of 12 years had written me out of his will entirely. The car ride home from the lawyer's office was silent. Robert tried to speak several times, but I held up my hand each time, cutting him off before he could begin. "Not yet," I said. "I'm not ready yet." He respected that at least. We drove the 45 minutes back to Greenwich in complete silence, the weight of what had been revealed sitting between us like a third passenger. When we finally pulled into the driveway of the Harrison family estate, a home I had lived in for 12 years, decorated, maintained, filled with memories, I still didn't speak. I went directly to my study, closed the door, and sat in the darkness for 3 hours. I wasn't crying. I wasn't raging. I was thinking. Thinking about 12 years of marriage. Thinking about every time I had been made to feel like an outsider. Thinking about the phrase current wife and what it revealed about how Robert's world saw me. Thinking about what I was going to do next. When I finally emerged, Robert was waiting in the living room, a glass of whiskey in his hand, looking older than I had ever seen him. "Can we talk now?" he asked. "Yes." "Vivian, I need you to understand. I understand perfectly." "No, you don't. The will, it's complicated. The business, the family trusts, the way everything is structured. I understand that you wrote me out of your will without telling me, that after 12 years of marriage, everything you have goes to your children from your first marriage, that I am, in the eyes of your estate plan, essentially a stranger. That's not true. Your lawyer called me your current wife. Your estate leaves me nothing. What part of that isn't true?" Robert set down his whiskey. "The business has to stay in the family. It's been Harrison-owned since my grandfather started it. If I divide it, if I leave shares to someone who isn't a blood Harrison, someone like your wife of 12 years, it complicates things. The children, the board, the legacy. I never asked for your business, Robert. I never asked for shares or control or any of that. But you didn't just protect the business. You left me nothing. Not the house, not savings, not anything, after 12 years. There's life insurance, which I never knew about because you never told me, just like you never told me about the will." He had no response to that. "When did you change it?" I asked quietly. "What?" "The will. When did you change it to exclude me completely?" He couldn't meet my eyes. 3 years ago. 3 years. We had been married for 9 years when he decided I deserved nothing. Why? Stephanie and Marcus were worried. After the divorce, their mother got so much, half the liquid assets, the apartment in the city, alimony for years. They were afraid that if something happened to me, you would... He trailed off. I would what? Take their inheritance? Leave them destitute? They were protecting themselves. They were protecting themselves, and you helped them. You chose them over me 3 years ago, and you never said a word. I was going to tell you. When? When were you going to tell me that I've been working toward a future that doesn't include me? That I've been building a life with someone who is legally ensured I get nothing when he's gone? Robert reached for my hand. I stepped back. I want to be alone now. We can talk more tomorrow. Vivian. Tomorrow. I walked upstairs to our bedroom, closed the door, and began to plan. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I sat in the darkness, thinking about everything I had learned and everything I needed to do. Robert had made his choice 3 years ago. He had chosen his children's comfort over his wife's security. He had chosen their fears over my 12 years of loyalty. He had chosen legacy over love. Now, I would make my choice. The next morning, I called my own attorney. Her name was Michelle Okonkwo, a sharp, no-nonsense woman I had met through my parents' network years ago. She specialized in estate planning, trusts, and the kind of complex financial arrangements that wealthy families use to protect their assets. "I need to update my will," I told her. "Of course. What changes are you considering?" "I want to leave everything to charity. Every asset I have, my retirement accounts, my investments, my life insurance, the savings I've accumulated over my career. All of it goes to the causes I care about. Nothing goes to my husband or his family." Silence on the other end. "Vivienne, that's a significant decision. Can I ask what prompted this?" "I discovered yesterday that my husband changed his will 3 years ago to leave me nothing. Everything goes to his children from his first marriage. After 12 years of marriage, I'm entitled to nothing from his estate." "I see." Michelle's voice was carefully neutral. "And you want to respond in kind?" "I want to make a statement. I want him to understand what exclusion feels like. And I want to ensure that my assets I earned through my own work, my own career, my own effort, go to people and causes that actually value what I have to offer." "That's your right." "Absolutely." "Can you draw up the paperwork?" "I'll have a draft ready by end of week." "Thank you, Michelle." "Vivienne, one more thing." "Yes?" "Are you sure you don't want to discuss this with Robert first? Sometimes these things can be worked out. He had 3 years to discuss it with me. He chose not to. I'm simply following his example." Michelle paused. "Understood. I'll be in touch." I spent the next 18 months living a double life. On the surface, nothing changed. I continued to be Robert's wife, attending functions, hosting dinners, playing the role I had played for 12 years. I was cordial with his children, pleasant with his business associates, the perfect partner in public. Robert seemed relieved that I hadn't left him. We never discussed the will again after that first conversation. He tried to bring it up once, a few weeks after the lawyer's office, mumbling something about making adjustments and finding a solution. "There's nothing to discuss," I told him. "You made your choice. I've made peace with it." He interpreted that as forgiveness, as acceptance, as confirmation that our marriage could continue as before, with this ugly truth simply swept under the Persian rug. He was wrong. Beneath the surface, I was transforming. I increased my retirement contributions to the maximum allowed. I restructured my investment portfolio for growth. I took on additional consulting work, building my savings with a focus and determination I had never felt before. I also began carefully disentangling my life from Robert's. The joint credit card we shared? I opened my own account and quietly shifted my spending there. The household accounts I had access to? I documented everything but stopped contributing from my personal funds. The social connections I had built through his world? I maintained them, but I also cultivated my own network. Friends who knew me as Vivienne, not as Robert Harrison's wife. I was preparing for a future that didn't include him, but I didn't tell him that. I smiled, I performed, I waited. My mother had taught me that patience was its own kind of power. I was learning exactly how powerful it could be. The health scare came 18 months after I discovered the will. Robert had been having chest pains for weeks but had dismissed them as stress. He was 67 now, still working long hours, still refusing to slow down despite his doctor's recommendations. On a Tuesday afternoon in March, he collapsed in his office. I got the call at 2:47 p.m. Marcus Jr., his voice tight with fear, telling me that his father was being rushed to Hartford Hospital. I drove to the hospital in a daze. Whatever had happened between Robert and me, whatever betrayals had accumulated over the years, I didn't want him to die. 12 years of shared history meant something, even if that something had been tarnished by his choices. When I arrived, Stephanie and Marcus Jr. were already in the waiting room. They looked at me with something I had never seen before in their eyes: fear, uncertainty. The sudden awareness that their father's mortality was not an abstract concept. "What happened?" I asked. "Heart attack," Stephanie said, her voice shaking. "They're doing tests now. They don't know how bad it is." We waited together, the three of us, united for once by something other than our mutual discomfort. Hours passed. Doctors came and went with updates that were cautiously optimistic, but non-committal. Finally, at 9 p.m., the cardiologist emerged. "He's stable. It was a mild heart attack. We call it a warning shot. No permanent damage, but it's a serious wake-up call. He needs to make significant lifestyle changes. Less stress, better diet, and he needs to get his affairs in order." "Get his affairs in order?" Marcus Jr. asked. "What does that mean?" "It means he's not dying today, but today is a reminder that none of us live forever. It's a good time to make sure everything is organized. Wills, healthcare directives, that sort of thing." I saw Stephanie and Marcus Jr. exchange a glance. They were thinking about the will, about their inheritance, about making sure nothing had changed. I was thinking about something else entirely. Robert came home from the hospital a week later, chastened and shaken in a way I had never seen before. He had always been so confident, so certain of his place in the world. Now he moved carefully, spoke quietly, looked at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. "I've been thinking," he said one evening as we sat in the living room, "about a lot of things." "Such as?" "The will. What happened in William's office. The way I handled everything." I said nothing. "I want to make changes. I want to update the will to include you properly. You've been my wife for 12 years. You deserve to be taken care of." "Robert, I know I should have done this years ago. I know I let Stephanie and Marcus convince me to protect assets that should have been shared. I was wrong." He reached for my hand. This time, I let him take it. "I want to make it right. I've already called William. We're meeting next week to revise everything." I looked at my husband, this man I had loved, had trusted, had given 12 years of my life to. This man who had excluded me from his legacy and was now, facing his own mortality, trying to make amends. "Don't," I said quietly. "What?" "Don't change your will on my account." He looked confused. "But I want to include you. I want to make sure you're protected. I've made other arrangements." The confusion deepened. "What do you mean?" "I mean that 18 months ago, when I learned that you had written me out of your will, I wrote mine too. I've left everything I have to charity. Every asset, every account, every penny I've earned in my career goes to causes I believe in. Nothing goes to you or your children." Robert's face went pale. "You... what?" "You excluded me from your legacy. I've excluded you from mine." "Vivienne, I was going to fix it. 3 years, Robert. You changed your will 3 years ago. You had 3 years to tell me, 3 years to fix it. You only want to include me now because you almost died, because you're scared, because suddenly your mortality is real and you want to feel like a good person. That's not fair. What's not fair is spending 12 years building a life with someone who secretly decided you deserve nothing. What's not fair is learning from a lawyer's slip of the tongue that your husband has been planning a future without you in it." I pulled my hand away. "You made your choice 3 years ago. I made mine 18 months ago. The difference is, I'm telling you about it." Robert sat in stunned silence. Can I see your will?" "Why?" "I need to understand. I need to see what you've done." I went to my study and retrieved the document. I had kept it in my personal safe, waiting for this moment. I handed it to Robert and watched his face as he read. The will was comprehensive, detailed, thorough. My retirement accounts, $1.2 million accumulated over a 25-year career, went to educational scholarships for first-generation college students. My investment portfolio, $800,000 in diversified funds, went to organizations supporting women entrepreneurs in developing countries. My life insurance, $500,000, went to a foundation that provided microloans to small businesses in Nigeria, my parents' homeland. Personal items, art, jewelry, all donated to charity auctions benefiting causes I had supported for decades. The total value of my estate was just over $2.7 million. $2.7 million that Robert and his children would never see. Robert's hands were shaking as he finished reading. You're worth $2.7 million. I've worked for 30 years. I've saved. I've invested. I've built my own security because I learned long ago not to depend on anyone else. I had no idea. You never asked. You assumed I needed your money because everyone in your world needs something. You never considered that I might have my own. Vivienne, please. We can fix this. Both of us. We can update both wills. Fix what, Robert? Fix 3 years of knowing you plan to leave me nothing? Fix 12 years of being treated like an outsider by your children while you did nothing? Fix the fact that you only want to include me now because you're afraid of dying? I love you. You have a strange way of showing it. He was crying now, actually crying, tears streaming down his face. What do you want me to do? Tell me what to do, and I'll do it. I looked at my husband, at the man I had loved, at the man who had betrayed me in the quietest, most devastating way possible. I want you to understand something. I didn't marry you for your money. I never wanted your company, your house, your family legacy. I wanted you. I wanted a partner. I wanted to build a life together. We did build a life. We built your life, your house, your family gatherings, your traditions. I was adjacent to all of it, but I was never really part of it. Your children made sure of that, and you let them. I can change. I can talk to Stephanie and Marcus. It's too late for that. The will was just the final confirmation of what I already knew. I was never really your wife in their eyes, and apparently, I was never really your wife in yours either. I stood up. Keep your will as it is. Leave everything to your children. That's clearly what you want, and I won't stand in the way of it. And your will? Stays as it is. Everything goes to charity. When I die, my legacy will be scholarships and microloans and opportunities for people who need them. That feels right to me. And us? Our marriage? I looked at Robert for a long moment. I'm not leaving you. I'm not asking for a divorce. We can continue as we have been, living together, presenting a united front to the world. But I need you to understand that something fundamental has changed. You showed me who I am to you. I've accepted it. Now we both live with the consequences. Robert looked broken, but I felt, for the first time in years, whole. The aftermath of that conversation was strange and sad, and ultimately clarifying. Robert did change his will. Against my wishes, he included a provision leaving me the house and a portion of his liquid assets. I need to do this for myself, he said, even if you won't accept it. I didn't argue. What he did with his estate was his choice, just as what I did with mine was mine. Stephanie and Marcus Jr. learned about my will through Robert. I'm not sure how that conversation went, but I can imagine. The children, who had spent 12 years treating me like a gold digger, discovered that I had millions of my own and had chosen to leave every penny to charity rather than fight for a share of their father's wealth. Stephanie called me once, about a month after Robert's health scare. I hear you're leaving everything to charity, she said without preamble. That's correct. Why? Because it's mine to leave to whoever I choose, just as your father's estate is his to leave to whoever he chooses. You could have asked for more. After what he did with the will, I could have. But I didn't marry your father for money, Stephanie. I never wanted your family's wealth. I wanted to be part of your family. That's very different. Silence on the other end. We were never very welcoming to you. No, you weren't. I'm sorry. The apology surprised me. In 12 years, it was the first genuine acknowledgement from either of Robert's children. Thank you for saying that. Does it change anything? I thought about the question. It changes how I feel about you. It doesn't change what I've decided about my estate. Fair enough. We hung up. It wasn't reconciliation, exactly, but it was something. My mother came to visit 3 months after Robert's health scare. She walked through the Harrison family estate, the house I had lived in for 12 years, the house that might eventually be mine whether I wanted it or not, and said nothing for a long time. Finally, she sat down in the sunroom, looked out at the manicured gardens, and spoke. "Tell me about the will." I told her everything: Robert's secret change, the lawyer's slip, my response, the charity donations, Robert's health scare, the conversation afterward. When I finished, she was quiet for another long moment. "You're giving away $2.7 million. Yes. To charity. Yes. Not to punish him, not to make a point. The point was made when I told him. The actual distribution, that's about what I believe in, what I want my legacy to be." My mother nodded slowly. "Your father did something similar once. Did I ever tell you?" "No. Before we were married, he had a business partner who cheated him, stole money, lied to customers, nearly destroyed everything your father had built. Your father could have sued, could have fought, could have spent years in court trying to recover what was taken. What did he do? He walked away, started over, built something new without the partner's taint on it. Did he regret it? Never. He said, 'I would rather build something clean than fight over something dirty.' The money he lost was nothing compared to the peace of mind he gained." She took my hand. "You're doing the same thing, not fighting for money that would always feel tainted, building a legacy that's entirely yours. It feels right. Then it is right." She squeezed my hand. "But I have to ask, are you staying with him?" "For now." "Why?" I considered the question. Because leaving would feel like running away. And because, despite everything, there were good years. Real love, at least for a while. I'm not ready to throw all of that away. "Even though he hurt you?" "He hurt me, but I've made peace with who he is. I'm not hoping he'll change anymore. I'm not expecting his children to accept me. I'm just living my life, on my own terms." My mother smiled. "Your grandmother would be proud." "Why?" She used to say, "The strongest position is needing nothing from anyone. You've found that position. You've made yourself untouchable. It doesn't feel strong. It feels lonely sometimes. Strong things often do." She stood up and hugged me. "But you're not alone, baby. You have your family, your real family. People who have always valued you exactly as you are." I cried then. For the first time since the lawyer's office, I let myself really cry. My mother held me until the tears stopped. "What happens now?" she asked. "Now I live, I work, I build the life I want, whether Robert is part of it or not. And when I die, everything I've created goes to people who will appreciate it. And his children, his legacy, they can have what was always theirs. I never wanted it anyway." It's been 2 years since Robert's health scare. He's doing better now. Changed his diet, reduced his stress, started actually listening to his doctors. The heart attack was the wake-up call he needed, at least physically. Our marriage is different than it was. Quieter. More honest in some ways. We don't pretend anymore that everything is fine. We acknowledge the distance between us and choose, each day, to stay together anyway. Maybe that sounds sad. Maybe it is sad. But there's also a kind of peace in it. I know exactly who Robert is now. I know exactly what I mean to him, and what I don't. I've stopped hoping for more and started appreciating what actually exists. His children have softened toward me, slightly. Stephanie invited me to her daughter's birthday party last month, the first time I've been included in a family event without Robert's explicit intervention. Marcus Jr. asked my opinion about a business decision, something he never would have done before. It's not acceptance exactly, but it's something, and my will remains unchanged. $2.7 million, growing slightly each year, designated for scholarships, microloans, charitable foundations. Nothing for the Harrison family, nothing for the legacy that never included me. My legacy will be different. It will be mine. Last month, I spoke at a women's leadership conference about financial independence. A young woman in the audience asked me a question during the Q&A. How do you know when to fight for what you deserve and when to walk away? I thought about Robert, about the will, about 12 years of trying to belong somewhere I was never wanted. You fight when fighting will change something, I said. You walk away when you realize that winning would cost you more than losing. Some battles aren't about getting what you deserve, they're about recognizing that you deserve better than the battle itself. And the money? She pressed. How do you walk away from money? Money is a tool. It can buy security, freedom, opportunities, but it can also buy you into a life you never wanted. The question isn't, how much can I get? The question is, what kind of life do I want to live? Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is prove that you never needed it in the first place. After the conference, an older woman approached me. I heard your speech. It sounded personal. It was. Did it help? Giving away the money? Did it make you feel better? I considered the question. It made me feel free. For years I was trapped in a story someone else wrote about me. The gold digger, the second wife, the woman who married for money. When I gave everything to charity, I rewrote that story. I proved, to them and to myself, that I was never who they thought I was. And was that worth $2.7 million? I smiled. It was worth everything. If this story resonates with you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Drop a comment telling me where you're watching from and whether you've ever had to prove your worth by walking away from something valuable. Like and subscribe for more stories about dignity, self-worth, and the power of writing your own legacy. He changed his will without telling me. Everything goes to my kids from my first marriage. I found out by accident, from his lawyer's slip. We'd been married 12 years. I didn't argue, didn't fight, didn't demand my share. I just changed my will too. $2.7 million to charity. Nothing to him. Nothing to his children. 18 months later, he had a health scare. Suddenly wanted to update his will to include me. I said, "Don't bother. I've made other arrangements." When he saw my will, his hands shook. He finally understood what 12 years of exclusion had cost. Not my inheritance. His. The legacy of being loved by someone who never wanted his money. Just him.